The global financial crisis, a time of economic downturn. From 2007 to 2009, a time where really not much actually happened in the world. A time where we struggled, countries struggled, and a time when Australia shone through. It was a time where we kept at consecutive years of economic growth, which is now recently finished with 28 years, from 1992 to 2020. But the thing is, what actually happened with the global financial crisis and why did it happen? The GFC, or the global financial crisis, occurred as people in the US in the real estate market were foreclosing on their properties. As they were foreclosed on their loans, this saw banks losing a significant amount of money. They didn't have their loans anymore. And yes, they may have had houses. But at that period of time, as so many people were not being able to repay their loans, this saw the housing market drop and the price decrease as a result of this. With the US, the real estate market crashing, this also then saw the global financial institutions also break. This is a result as they took too much risk with what they were doing with their money. So as a result, this then saw the financial markets crash all over the world. Australia was different to the majority of the world. What they did was they made sure to be able to encourage investment, encourage consumption in the market. If there was no encouragement for consumption and investment, there was guaranteed to be an economic downturn or a recession. A recession would be as to when there's two periods of negative economic growth. Australia did pretty well in the global financial crisis due to two reasons. Firstly, what the RBA did in response to the global financial crisis, but also due to what the Australian government did during the time of the GFC. Firstly, the RBA reduced the cash rate. So for all the money which they're lending to the big banks, this was at a much lower rate. So as it costs a lot less now to be able to get this money from the RBA, this would encourage investment and consumption. As now we see the banks be able to get their money for cheaper, which then they can then pass on to their customers who are wanting a loan of some sort of money, maybe for a house or for something else in their lives. Secondly, we'll talk about the government. The Kevin Rudd government did an extremely good job at what they were doing in handling the global financial crisis. What they did was that they provided stimulus packages. Stimulus packages allowed people to be able to get more money back. And with the hopes of this, they were hoping that they would be able to then, with that extra money, be able to inject it back into the economy. As the economy was suffering quite significantly, it was really important that people did spend. Because at the point of time when the GFC happened, that is when consumption dropped quite considerably. And we needed to have that back into the economy. And let's be real, they did a really good job. That stimulus check really helped and got people to be able to spend more money and pump it into the economy. However, it does give the question as to what actually happened with that money. Not all of it was spent. And I think that's what the Kevin Rudd government was trying to do. They were trying to encourage consumption, encourage investment, and that didn't happen. So the question is maybe, how could we have maybe done a better job at doing this and really, maybe possibly, even be able to have economic growth rate during the global financial crisis? Maybe what we could have done, we could have been able to give those stimulus checks, but maybe we give them for businesses. So then in that case, to be able to actually use the stimulus check, they had to go to that business and actually spend that money, and then they'd get the credit back. Then we would definitely be making sure that businesses are getting, the money which they're getting from selling all their products, but also consumers are getting what their value's worth by going to that restaurant. And I think that would have been a really interesting idea. Yes, the onus is on the consumer. It is on the Australians who were struggling during the global financial crisis. But this is what could have been done and really could have helped the economy even more. You think of, yes, the 28 years of economic growth. We were the only country in the world that had over 20 years of economic growth. We were thriving. We were doing amazingly. The US struggled during the global financial crisis. And then at that point, they didn't have the amount of economic growth that we had. Ever since 1992. How impressive is that? As a country, Australia did amazingly. And up until COVID, it was doing awesome. Now, we're back at square one. So now we're going to be going for our first year of economic growth. And yes, we're probably going to get it with the tourism industry coming back. Hopefully education soon, so international students are coming back. But we're going to get back there. But really, we didn't struggle too much. Yes, we did struggle. People did lose jobs. But we got to remember that housing prices didn't really get affected as much as the US. I think really what we did was absolutely amazing. And you have to give your hands up. You have to give a round of applause to Kevin Rudd and his government. They did an awesome job. And same with the RBA as well. And while we did struggle and, while people were losing their jobs due to the global financial crisis, I feel really proud as an Australian to know that what happened was, with the expansionary policy that our government was doing, that they were spending more than they were actually making through taxes. They really tried to be able to pump money into the economy, keep it going during this tough time. Just like Australia right now, with the Morrison government, they did this during JobSeeker. And to be honest, you gotta be impressed by it, whichever way you lean. It's so awesome to see that what our governments are doing, it's doing what's best for the economy. Keeping it running, giving the people, giving the workers money. So for last year, giving the $1,500. Imagine how important that is. Yes, they're probably not all gonna spend it, and we would love people to spend. But they're still spending money, and that's the most important thing. And that's what keeps the economy going. With that spending of money, that's how we're gonna keep our economy to be where it is. We think of what happened. While I can't think back to the GFC, I'm thinking of all that money that could have been spent on the education, on holidays. Now, for the future, we just got to make sure that this doesn't happen. So making sure that the RBA and the government on the same terms, making sure that our economy keeps thriving. And yes, we did lose our consecutive years of economic growth. But now we look for the future and we think of the massive opportunities that we have. Whatever we now say, if you're watching this video, and I hope you are, I want you to be knowing that this is what's going to happen. If the Australian economy, the RBA, the government, if they keep doing what they've been doing over the last 20 years, we should know that spending our money is going to be safe. We should keep encouraging consumption. We should keep increasing our rate of consumption. This rate really hasn't increased, hasn't really been as high since probably the early to mid 2000s. And we need to work this out. We need to get consumption back to where it was before. Honestly, I think as an Australian, you should be really encouraged to be able to consume your money. Australia has a very, very good job of making sure that the banks are safeguarded, so you got your money. Up to $250,000 will be safeguarded under government law. Or you think about all the money that we've been spending. All the money that we've been spending on hotels recently, on restaurants, that's being pumped into the economy. And you should be encouraged to, yes, consume your money. Because if it just stays there, it's really not going to be doing too much. Why not? Why not spend the money? The money there, yes, it is safe, but you can spend it on other opportunities. Australia has struggled with consumption. They are probably still worried due to the early 2000s, during the global financial crisis, when the banks failed. Yes, sometimes stuff failed. The financial institutions, they took too much risk on. But now, why not? We've had banking commissions. Australia's banks are the best that they've ever been. They will make sure not to fold again. So why can't we increase consumption? Why are we struggling to do it? And honestly, I don't truly understand the answer. So, if you have a friend, if you're watching the video, which you must be, why don't we increase our consumption? Yes, we increase it to some degree, but the more money that comes through our economy, the more money it can make. We think of the reserve ratio. As the more we spend, this will then keep circulating around in the circular flow model, and the money will keep increasing, and no risk should really be stopping you from consumption. Yes, you've got money which you need to spend on utilities, your rent, your food, and that's for sure. That's what you need to do. But why don't you consider holidaying in Australia? Definitely, I'm sure with lots of people with JobSeeker, they have a lot of extra money to spend. You can consider a holiday in Australia. Or, maybe you just support that local business and, you buy that one shirt or those pants or something like that. So with anything, I think the most important lesson to know from the global financial crisis and a little bit from COVID is when the government is encouraging you to spend money by giving you that stimulus check, which was probably around nearly $1,000 for most people, spend it. If you spend that, that's going to keep going around in the economy. And if that's the case, we're going to reduce the losses that we suffered during the global financial crisis or events in the future. So that's my advice to you. Why not just spend it? Why don't we see consumption go up? We should try and we should implore people to do it. Because what's the reason why? Why can't we consume more? We save money, but what's the money doing? Yes, the money is going to be saved for investing. And yes, we should invest. Or it might just be saved for a rainy day. But why can't we leave a small portion for it to be spent on the economy? Our economy needs to bounce back, and it is bouncing back, but it's going to take a lot of time to bounce back. You think of the global financial crisis, yes, we did bounce back, but it takes some time. And to be honest, people's behaviors haven't actually fully changed yet. We haven't got back up to a rate of consumption before when we were at the GFC. We haven't got to that rate yet. And I really want to see it happen. The RBA is doing their job. They're trying to encourage investment, but it hasn't happened yet. So the question I really want to ask is, why hasn't it? And yeah, I don't know. So I think it's going to be so interesting to think as to how modern day Australians, how people my age, how we encourage people and ourselves to invest more, to consume more. When we find that answer, it's going to be a great day for Australia. We can then help. We can help these businesses. We can get that money circling around in that circular flow model. And yes, it's really going to help our standard of living. With that being said, guys, I'm going to leave this video here. I hope you guys understand now as to what happened with the GFC and how thankful we should be as to what happened with the Rudd government. I also want to encourage you and give me questions down below. Why are people in Australia and yes, probably in the world, why are they not spending more money that they have on consumption? Is there negativity about saving or about spending? Please let me know in the comments below. I'd be so interested to hear your story. But anyway, guys, with that being said, I hope you've had a great day and I'll see you in my next video. See ya!